Is being
where we are
recorded.
going to talk about advanced calculations. And my hope is that you learn some information that's going to really be able to manipulate the data in any way that you need to in order to fit whatever use case you're working on. Some of these advanced calculations can be very, very powerful and really take your analytics to the next level. Just real quick, who am I? Here's a quick face to the voice type thing, and just want to introduce myself. I'm one of the senior customer consultants down here in Southern California, and Rob Levine is on as well to field some of those questions. He's one of my colleagues and teammates, and I've just hit my anniversary. Spent the last 5 years just really working with a lot of different enterprise customers down in the Southern California area, helping them see and understand data. I have over 20 years of experience in both IT and BI. I was born in the East Bay, um, and I was born and raised there. On the playground is where I spent most of my days. So I really love to be outside, enjoying sports. At some point, I thought maybe taking analytics and sports and maybe putting them together, I could do some wagering and maybe really hit it big. And that really hasn't happened. But maybe if some of you folks are out in Vegas, maybe we can for our conference in a couple weeks or in a few weeks that maybe we can come together and maybe figure something out. All right, so on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the different types of calculations. We're really going to be more focused on the advanced calculations, but we really have three types of calculations. We have basic calculations, and those can somewhat cross over into advanced. We have table calculations, and then we also have these calculations called level of detail calculations or LOD calculations. So let's get started. Let's open up a Tableau workbook or Tableau desktop. And the first thing we're going to focus on, I know there might be some folks on the call that may be fairly new to calculations. So I want to just level set what is our expression editor, what is our calculation editor, and just do a couple kind of more basic to advanced type calculations. So what we're looking at here is we have a breakdown of all of our sales across our different subcategories up top here, and then our regions along the side here, and each bar represents our sales. So what we could do if we wanted to color this out by sales to see which ones, have the most sales, I could drop my pill on color. And what it's going to do is Tableau is going to automatically create a distribution of that sales, find a center point, and start to color code along a gradient. But what if I wanted to specifically call out, hey, I want any of my sales above a certain threshold to be one color, anything in between to be another color, anything below another color. So we could do that through a calculated field. And if I go and click on this arrow up in the top of where our data pane is, that's one way to select a calculated field. We're going to create that. And we get this expression editor. And you can see off to the right side, sometimes when you launch this, just something to take note of, it might look like this. And you might not see all the expressions, but it's simply just expand using this arrow here, and you'll be able to see them all. And we categorize these different expressions logically. So I can go to like type conversion calculations, aggregate calculations. And when you click on some of these, like if I click on count, I get a nice description on and an example of how to use this type of calculation. So we're going to use a logical calculation, and we're going to use an if then else, and we'll call this our sales KPI. Let me expand this so you can see it easier. So I'm simply going to say if sum of sales, so I need that aggregation greater than, let's say 80,000. Then, and what's cool is as I start to type this, you can see that I get suggestions on what I can choose as far as functions and fields within the data set. So if sum of sales is greater than that, let's just call this great. Else, if sum of sales greater than, let's say, 30,000, fair, else bad. And let's end that statement. So what's great about this statement, or something to take note, is that you don't have to say, like, if it's in between those two numbers, or if I don't even have to specify when it's fair. And so what I mean by that is, what it's doing, it's evaluating anything greater than 80,000 is great. Else, if anything is greater than 30,000, and because we've already set up this 80,000 condition, it's really going to assume that it's going to be between 30,000 and 80,000 is going to be our fair value, and then anything below that is going to be bad. So this is a much more efficient way to write it. I don't have to say if it's falls in between those two numbers. And let's just hit OK. So now what I can do is drop that sales those three conditions that I set up. And we're just taking Tableau is just assigning colors to those particular marks, but we can click in our legend if we wanted to, and maybe we want great to be blue, and we want fair to be gray, and I can just click on each one of these legends and assign the colors that I prefer. So now we can see that our conditional statement has now been applied. The next one I want to just show you real quick is, what if we wanted to see how many days has elapsed between our order dates and our ship dates, so that we could see if we're shipping things on time. So let's create another calculation field here and call this ship time. And we could use our date diff calculation to just simply subtract those two dates, our order date and our ship date. So we just simply use a date diff. We want to, and you can see when we start to type this, we can see the syntax here. So we need a date part, we need a start date, and we need an end date. So our date part is, we want it to be a day, and then we just simply want to start typing in our order date minus our ship date. And you'll notice that if they're fields within the data source, they're enclosed in brackets, as well as they are color coded in orange. Okay on this. Drop that on color, and now we can see, and we don't want it sum necessarily, we want an average. So this is where we do have, if you've been using Tableau, we have these built-in measures where we can just change the aggregation. By default, it's going to be a sum. But in this instance, we're going to select an average because we want to know what the average ship time is. And maybe we want this to, we want a little different color coding. So we want two different colors to be able to separate what our ship times are. So I can come into my legend here. I'll use red and black, as maybe you saw in my picture that I'm a San Diego State Aztec fan. So I love red and black. But now we can really easily see, and let's even drop our ship time on label as well. Again, let's change this to an average, sorry. And now we can see what our average ship times are, across the US. Okay. The next thing we're going to cover, so those are some of the basic type calculations that you can do. Again, there's a ton of expressions in there. So if you're used to using database functions or using expressions in Excel, should come. A lot of those are the same and should come easy to you. So the next thing we're going to start to get a little bit more advanced is we're going to talk about table calculations. Now, table calculations are basically, if you think about why we're calling it table calculations, we're looking at a table here, right, of data. We see our months across the top, and we have our categories along the side here, and then we have our sales. So what we're going to do is Tableau allows us, it's not like Excel where I can pick a specific cell and do a calculation on that, or I have to call out, the intersection, the tuple of, B1 times, C2. It's in a structure based off of the dimensionality that we brought in, right? So it's broken out by each one of our months and our categories. So we need to tell Tableau how we want to traverse through these different types of different values through the table. And so to illustrate this, let's create a calculated field, and I'm going to call this index. And I'm going to use the function index. And so I didn't actually use the function index. I used the term index. I want to make sure I use the function. I already have this, so let's call this index 2. Let's just drag this to our view. What I want to illustrate here is by default, this thing is compute using table across. You can see this, we're aggregating or across the table here. So you can see as we go up the months, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we are resetting here. So if we change this to say compute using down, now it goes down the table. So this would allow us, if we were going to say create a running total of sales, if we did it across the table, we would be summing across this way. If we did down, we'd be doing it going down this way. We could also see this illustrated if you hit Edit Table Calc. We also get this highlighter that also helps you understand table calcs as well. So let's go back to across. So this shows me not only through my index that we're creating across here, and if we hit down, we're now aggregating across this way. And if we hit table across then down, we're going across and then down and continuing to aggregate. That gives you a better picture of how we are using table calcs and how we can compute using different types of scenarios. So the other thing I want to show you, and let's change this back to across, is how we might use, say, a function like first or last. So there is a first function in here. I'm going to create a simple calculation with first, and let's bring this into the view as well. What this is doing, it's going to, within this table across, because that's what the default is it's saying this is our first value, and we're anchoring this as a 0. And for us, when we're on a particular cell, so we're on sales, and maybe we want to compare sales to the very first value in this table, right, which is the 31,569, we would have to step backwards one step from here. Or if we were in this March area, we'd have to go 2 steps back, right? And so this allows us to pinpoint maybe specific field values within a table to maybe do some math against, right? To do some comparisons. And we'll see this play out a little bit more in a minute here. And then same things apply here. So if I change my first to table down, right? And I wanted to go from this sales up to this furniture sales, I would need to go, one back from here. So it's basically what's considered an offset. Okay. So the other one I want to just show you real quick is also last. It's going to be very similar to what first is. Pop that in there. So now we see the last value in this partition, right, or in this table across is our December here, all the way to the right. And so if we were in November, if we wanted to grab the value in December, we would go positive, right? We would go 1, we would add 1 as an offset. Or if we wanted to go from October, it'd be 2, and so on. Okay, so what if we wanted to look up a value, say sales, and we wanted to be based off the first value so that we can do maybe some comparisons here. So we can create a calculated field. Zoom this in again. I want to call max sales. And we simply want to a lookup. And if we actually, let me zoom out real quick, and I want to show you what lookup is. And we click on lookup. So lookup returns the value of a given expression in a target row, and you can specify what that offset might be. So if I'm going to look up in this instance down below the sum of profit, and we're going to anchor it to the first, and then 2 rows after that. So the sum of profit is going to be the third row in the partition. Let's create that calculation. See what that's going to look like. So I'm going to select lookup, and we want the sum of sales. Again, we want our offset to be the first. And we just want to start it from that very first value, that 0. And what are we missing here? Again, I keep naming the same fields the same. So we just need to get rid of that. Change that, and what am I doing wrong here? Actually, I don't want, I'm just going to anchor it to the first. Okay, let's take a look and see what this looks like. Let's put it here. So what we can see here is I've brought in this value for every single one of my rows, right? So what it's doing is it's saying look up for each one of these columns, look up the first value. So you can see it's going to just duplicate 31,569 all the way across. And then in office supplies, it's going to duplicate 33,234 all the way across. So what if we wanted to then compare that? We want to grab. Let's actually open up our calculation editor. We also have these Windows expressions. So these Windows expressions allow us to, if we wanted to find the window max sum of sales based off of that first row, January, and compare as we go through February, March, April, we want to know what is our max value, right? At which point in the month for a given month do we hit our max sales, and when does it change? So what we can do here is use Windows Max. And Windows Max, if we put in sum of sales, and we'll see what this looks like. I know it's hard when you're just describing it and you're not seeing it. Again, we're going to anchor this to the first, and then we're going to just look at the first, the 0 value here. We'll call this max sales. And sales question mark. So what this does, place our other max sales. So what this is doing, if you look at this, it's doing is comparing our sales here. So in this first category here, we have 31,569. We only have one value, so we're showing max sales is 31,569. And then the next time, what we're doing is we're comparing these two values. So when we're in February, we're saying, look at this max value, and out of these two, which one is higher? We go to the next one, now changes because 50 is greater than 31, changes. Now it stays 50 because 40 is lower than 50, and so on. So it's going to continue down 50 until we get a new max value, and then it's going to display that. So one of the things, if we wanted to conditionally highlight this, we could say max sales KPI, and we could simply say where my sum of sales equals my max sales. So what that's going to do is going to evaluate that as a Boolean. So let's drop that on color. And now it's going to also color when the changes happen, right? So we can see it didn't change here, it changed here, right? It didn't change. Oops, sorry, my max sales didn't change, changed, right? So where might this be very valuable to use? So say in a visualization type, what we could do here is if we had something like a line chart, and let's bring our sales on rows, and I'm just going to click and let Tableau just put it on there for me. And we wanted to look at our, not subcategory, let's look at our months here. One thing I'm doing here, if you're not aware, if I right click and drag, say, a date field out here, you can see that I get the selectable dates. So, you know, by default, when you drag in a date field, it starts at the top of the hierarchy like a year, and you have to drill through. This way I can just select a particular month. And what I can do here is let's bring in my max sales onto my rows as well. And let's change that. When you bring in two measures, you get two different marks cards here. So let's change this to circles. And also then let's put my max sales KPI on color. So now I can see my changes represented in my dots of when it actually changed. And then I could dual access these. On that rightmost pill, dual axes. Let's synchronize my axes here. Sorry, let me go back here. And sorry, I wanted to actually do a sales here, my KPI. Now I want to put my KPI color, circle. Okay, now we're in a good spot. So I wanted to put my sales on here so that I match my sales line here. Just put my max sales KPI on here so I can call out the change. And then let's dual access these. You always want to synchronize your axes when you do a dual axes, and then maybe even get rid of this header because we don't need two different charts here. So now this is a great view because I can see, you know, when I've maxed out my sales. So all these are when I've maxed out my sales between, you know, comparing across my different months. Okay. Talk about some quick table type calculations. So quick table calculations are one-click calculations that we have within each pill when you put a measure value out there. So what if we wanted to look at our total sales by subcategory? Let's sort this ascending. And we wanted to create like a waterfall chart. So what we can do here is on our sales pill here, we can click on this, go to our quick table calculations, and we can click, say, a running total. Again, by default, this is going to do a running total across. So we're, you know, aggregating each one of these subcategory values and then adding it to the bar, right, to get this running total here. And in order for us to create a waterfall type chart, we're going to go to our marks card here and select Gantt bar. And then what we want to do is we want to create these individual bars for a running total. So we're going to drag sales and put it on size. So we're close here, but what happens here is if you look at maybe our accessories here, the running sum is 815, but our bar is going from 815 at the low end and then adding the 167. So it's not a true representation. We really want the bars to go below, and then because we're adding the 167 accessories and we want it to top out at 815 here. But what we can simply do, and anytime you want to change a calculation or create a calculation, you can click right in these pills here. So let me zoom in on this. I'm just clicking in the pill, and I'm just going to simply put a minus sign here so that it's now going to fill the bar below. So now we can see that this last one is topping off at 647, then it comes over, then it adds our 167 to get to 815. So now we have a real true representation of what's going on here. And then maybe we want to put our profit on color just so we can see our profitability. Let's add our sales to labels. And we're almost done. A lot of times what you'll want to do is maybe on a waterfall chart, you probably want to maybe show the row grand totals here so we can see our totals. And now we have this nice running sum or running total that we've used as a quick table calculation, and a nice waterfall chart to see how our business is progressing for each one of our accessories. Okay, the next example I want to show is basically using our max sales to compare what are our sales for a particular subcategory, and how does that compare to our max sales? So if we were to bring in, say, quantity in our view, and I'm just going to double click, and I'm going to double click profit, and it's going to start to build out a scatter plot of our quantity over our profit. And I want to then bring my subcategory and details so I can see how this relates. And then I'm going to put my sales on size. So this is great. I can see and hover over each one of these subcategories and see, you know, how profitable are they and how many of them we're selling. But that's great, but it doesn't give us a lot of context. Like, is that a good thing, right? Are we selling a lot here? Is that a good thing compared to maybe the max sales that's out there? So what I can do is let's duplicate this max sales value here. And I could right click, I get a copy of it, edit this. So instead of anchoring this thing and looking at the Windows Max anchored to the first value, which was always my January value, I just want the entire data set, give me my max sum of sales. So I'm just going to remove that first. Okay. I'm going to duplicate quantity. One of the things how I duplicated sales last time in the rows, if you hold down Control and then like right click, grab the pill, you can always create a duplicate value of this. Just a little tip and trick there. So what I want to do here on my first marks card, on my quantity marks card, and it could be either one, to be honest with you, is that I want to now swap that with my max sales on size. And then what I want to do is compute using, I don't want to do table across because it's going to give me different values. I want to just do it for subcategory. So what that's going to give me is across all my subcategories, what is my max sales? And if you hover over any of these, you're going to see that we're getting that in the tooltip there at the bottom, 330,007. And if we were to go to like our validation screen here, and we can see phones is our max. So we're looking across all subcategories, looking at my max sales at 330,007. So now what I can do is, and let's maybe change this to, let's change the bottom one to a circle so we get that filled in. And let's do another dual axis of this. Sync our axes, maybe get rid of the axes. Now what I can do, what I can see here, and I could maybe even change down the transparency here. I get a really great comparison now between, oh, okay, we're doing a lot of sales in this particular category of appliances, but how does that relate to the overall sales, right? Of our highest selling category. So it really gives us some more context and more insight into the information that we're looking at. Okay. Has there been any questions actually out there that we need to address? I've meant to stop after the basics. Is there anything, Rob, that
Yeah, Brian.
come up?
So there is a question on what are the different use cases to use index versus first?
So I mean, first, if you first is where you're actually going to anchor, right, a certain value, and then you would have to, basically offset it. Index is going to give you, one of the great things with it, it used to be for used in index, and depending on what version you are on, index was a great way to help do nested sorting, because you could put a basically a number value on each individual. As you saw, like the index had each individual number value, um, almost like an index, right? Like in a book, right? Where you're gonna, or a page, where first is really the first in that partition, and then you would have to offset that with, with some kind of value. So it just, they're kind of very different. I don't know if, Rob, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think I think you hit the note pretty much on the head. One other question that did come across was to show the calculation again for the max.
For the window max? Okay. This guy here. Okay.
And then one other one, if you're able to, right now, otherwise we table it to the end. But is there an easy way to turn a waterfall chart into more of a bridge view where you have one starting value, say sum of sales for the start of 2019, and then have the bridge to where you end at the end of 2019? If that's too much, we can certainly table that to the end and address it then.
Yeah, I think I would just want to understand what you want to show kind of in the middle. I mean, I guess if the values, if you just went with straight, yeah, probably have to explore that further.
Yeah, we'll wait till the end then.
Okay, so we're going to move on to then our next example is level of detail calculations. So one of the things that is important to understand when we're talking about level of detail calculations is, and if you're not aware of this, is our order of operations. So this actually just tells you how things are being queried, or being executed within Tableau. So if we look at down here past our context filters, so anything extract filter, data source filter, and context filter related, and actually, yeah, we'll start here. Our fixed LOD falls within this, and then dimension filters get executed, and then under there, our include and exclude LODs get executed. So this will be important, and I'll show some examples of this in a second here, of how this works. But this is, it's important to understand how these things are being evaluated. So if we look at level of detail, let me go back here. So types of LOD calculations, and level of detail calculations allow you to pull data out the data source at different levels of detail than the view displays. And we'll see this in a minute. So as you realize, when we say we bring in sales and we bring in product category, everything gets aggregated at the category level. If we bring in months, everything is going to be aggregated by category and month. But what LODs allow us to do is go, customers not in our view, go give me the last time a customer ordered, and compare that with the rest of the customers, or the rest of the sales, right? So it allows me to go grab values at different levels of detail. And there's three types. There's fixed, include, and exclude. Fixed allows us to specify the aggregation level at any level that we want to within this the level of detail. So if we were to say everything up at the top here is aggregated, um, maybe these are three different dimensions that we've brought in, and at the viz level of detail, so the visually we're seeing it aggregated here. I could come up here using a fix and say, give me what the total sales is across the entire data set. Do not break it out by my three levels of detail. And then if we look at include is saying is our level of detail is still at this level, right? Say it's year, month category. Go grab something that is at a lower granularity of detail and give me those values. If we look at kind of the inverse of this is exclude, it's saying, hey, maybe exclude something at a lower level, right? And only give me a result that's at a higher level of aggregation. And we'll see those come into play here in a second. And it'll become a lot more clear, I hope. All right, so let's take a look at what this might look like. So we have four levels of detail here. We have our year and month, our region and category, right? And we see these spark lines for each one of these segments here. So what I can do here is create a calculated field, and these the level of detail calculations show up under our aggregate calculations. And you can see here they are, fixed, include, and exclude above it. So if we wanted to see our total sales, what I could simply do, and the construct of these is a curly brace. So if I type a curly brace and I just started typing in sum of sales, do here is put the word fixed, exclude, or include. By default, when I do this format, it's going to default to a fixed LOD calculation. So let's see what this looks like. Bring my total sales in, but on rows, you can see no matter what level of detail I'm at, right? So I'm in central furniture here. I'm getting the overall aggregation max of sales, right? Like 2 million. And if I look at any of these charts, they're all 2 million. So what if we wanted to now edit this? And I'm going to copy this one, drop it down here, and then you can always put in slashes to comment things out in here. So what if we wanted to now fix this at a region level? So what I would do here, type in fixed region. And this is the full construct of this. It's the dimensionality. And let me get my sum back in there, my aggregation, colon, and then sum of sales, and then your measure value aggregated. So let's hit apply here. And let's move this out of the way. So now what we're doing for each one of our regions, we're getting the total sales. So I'm getting 501. It's going to be 501 down here and 501, right? If we go down east, 678, right? And all the way down, it's going to be the same number. So now let's take this a step further. And let's just say, what if we just wanted this to be anchored to the month and year? So we're going to use month of order date. And let me zoom that in again. Month of order date. And anytime you have multiple dimensions, you just need to separate that with a comma. So that's what that's going to look like. So we're going to now fix it the month and year and grab the sum of sales. So here we go. So we're going to have the same exact view here for every single breakdown here. For every category, region, we're going to show the exact same thing here. Now, what if I added region in here? Hopefully you can guess what that's going to do. That is now not only by month and year, it's going to be by region. So you can see at this top here is 34,409. As I traverse down region, right, I'm going to have that same view. Same thing with east, right? If I traverse down. Now, if we kind of transition into exclude, so this is a lot more coding. But what we could do, because category, the one we showed above is month, or year, and region, we're excluding category. So we could simply say, start typing in exclude, and I could pick exclude, and it's going to give me the brace, which is nice. Exclude category, sum of sales. So there's a lot less coding, a lot less to write, but it's going to give us the same view. You see that this didn't move because all we're saying is just everything. If we talked about just show exclude category and show everything that's on the view. So just an easier way to do this. Other thing that we benefit using exclude is that we can take advantage of filters. So if we brought in segment in here and I select consumer, see this change. So now I'm only filtering out consumers. So 25, it's now gone down from 30 something thousand to 25,000. If I would have used the fixed, let's go back and show that. See 34,409, no matter what I do with my filters here, change my sales, you saw that change. This did not change because I'm fixing it at that. And if you looked at our order of operations of execution, dimension filters will not affect the fixed. It would not change it at all. The other thing, so what happens is when we're working with customers, sometimes they're using fix and they're using these filters and they're trying to figure out, well, why is this not working? Why are my filters not applying? Because they're using a fixed and not an exclude or include. So where would we maybe use an include? So an include would be an example like, hey, we want to include at the customer name level their average sales. So customer name is not in this view at all. But if I hit apply, so now I can see here's my average sales per customer for each one of my months here. And category and regions. And again, if I did bring in segment because of my include as a filter, it's gonna honor the filter because of the order of operations. Let's move on to, I'm gonna actually keep this view as this total sales as my month and year to illustrate some additional things of why this might be important. Let's look at our sales trend here. What we could do here is we're looking at just our sales by month here. If we want to, we could add this LOD created. And what we could do, actually, we want to go in and actually edit this. It should be good. Okay. Yep. So I want to just call this out. So what we're doing here is we're fixing this, right, at this, right? So essentially nothing is going to change this. We have said lock this in to month and order date and show me my sum of sales, right? So very different from the sales field here. And so what we could do here is let's dual access these. And what might look weird is they're sitting on top of each other. And that's why we're just seeing one color at this point. But let's change this to an, and we're going to see why this, why doing this and fixing this to that is going to help us here. So let's build a dashboard with these different objects. So let's bring in our waterfall, and let's bring in our let's bring in this sales trend, and I'm actually going to show that. So if we were to, this is a filter, and actually let me remove this real quick because I want to illustrate something here. So let's get rid of this for now. So what happens is the dashboard, and we're using this waterfall as a filter. So say I click on this, right? We're getting the viz down here is changing, and that's great. We're filtering by this particular machine, or maybe we select a set of marks, but there's not a lot of context here, right? Similar to what we talked about with the scatter plot. We don't know how does that compare to overall, right? So by adding that LOD where we're fixing the max sales, and let me bring this one in. Now when we filter, we can see how does that compare, right? So you can see the area chart back here is our LOD max sales, right? This is always going to stay in this form. But now when we select machines, we can see, wow, look at that. How does that compare? Machines compared to the overall, right? I can also select multiple marks here as well. So it just adds a lot more power, a lot more context. And so let's also bring in our scatter plot here to the right. One of the things that this is going to do is, and not show all that well, is anytime we click on something, it just shows a single mark. Now, if I selected multiple, it would show multiple marks, but we want to keep all these marks intact here. And that's just a matter of going through our dashboard actions. And let's edit the existing one. And let's say, let's not have it affect the scatter plot. And then we could add an additional highlight action. So on select of the waterfall, we want to just affect the scatter plot. So now when I select, say, accessories, now I can see the overall, how does it compare to the whole? And then I can also call it out here, how does it, in a different view, how does it, compare to the whole? Okay, so that kind of wraps up our different types of calculations. We started with some real basic calculations, and checked our different expressions. There's a lot of conditional logical expressions you can use. There's a lot of string manipulation calculations. If we go into, you just pull this up, how do we change and do number type calculations? How do we do string type calculations? Right, date manipulation calculations, type conversions, logicals and aggregates. User calculations are used for user level filtering, so row level security. This is where our users filtering comes into play. All those expressions, some are a little bit more basic, some are a little more advanced. We walk through table type calculations, as well as level of detail. There's a lot of great resources out on the web. If you just typed in, Tableau table calcs, or LODs. There's a bunch of great blogs out there to learn and how to do some of more of these advanced type calculations. And so just to wrap up, I want to a quick shout out to our next Tableau Tuesday webinar series. It's going to be actually not the second Tuesday of the month next month, because we do have our Tableau conference. Hopefully some of you guys will be joining us out there. It's actually going to be December 19th at 9 a.m. and we're going to talk about some product updates and TC highlights, so some things that we'll be announcing at our upcoming conference. With that said, are there additional questions out there that have been posted that we need to address?
Brian, thank you. Yeah, there was a reference to the include example. If you wouldn't mind pulling that back up if you're able to. The question was, I think there was some confusion on the results being the sum of all customer averages.
Okay. What specifically?
And I think what I'll do
Any
is
specifics around
I'm actually
that?
going to unmute all participants. So I think this question was posted by Weston Palmer. Again, I'm going to unmute all lines. If you have some background noise, or if you wouldn't mind just being mindful of the of your own speaker. So Weston, if you're still on, if you could just add some color to that question.
Maybe I can. So this, and if maybe I can add some. So this is saying that for customer, go across all my customers and show me the average sale cost my customers for this given region category. Hopefully that clears it up. If not, let me know.
And then, excuse me, the only outstanding question, Brian, is again the one by Jamie Lubin. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but
And I should put that there. I should have put it.
it's the question on the waterfall chart. It looks like what we're trying to do is show a comparison of sum of sales for the start of 2019 and then where we end at 2019. Jamie, if you're still on the line, you can unmute and speak up if there's detail that I'm missing there.
What was the question?
Let me pull it back up here one more time. I'm sorry about that. The question was, is there an easy way to turn a waterfall chart into more of a bridge
Oh, the
view?
bridge one.
Yeah, where you have one starting value, let's say sum of sales for the start of 2019, and then have the bridge to where you end at the end of 2019.
So you would almost be okay. So we're running end value would be a running sum, and beginning would just be a beginning value. Would we have to do that through? Just thinking Rob out loud, but I think we'd have to do that through charts, right? If we were to show, because the running sum, is essentially going to go through. So the idea would be show. Well, I mean this. So the end of 2019. So or the end of the prior year, right?
I'm wondering if maybe we did it at an LOD, using an LOD to just specify it at the year instead of the monthly level.
Right, but you'd want to show this. We'd want to show this, but then with a grand total here of say 2000, the prior year, right? Is what I'm reading this. I don't know if that person's.
That's a good question.
So grand totals on both sides here, right? This is grand total for this, and then grand total for the following. I think that's what. Yeah, I'd have to think through that. I think it might have to be done through a um, maybe a separate stitch chart. We can follow up. We'll take your name, and we can follow up with you.
Absolutely. Other than, there was a, can you quickly show us the index function one more time?
Yeah.
Sorry, while you're pulling that up, Jamie did post that yes, grand totals on both sides with the values bridging between.
Hmm.
So yeah, Jamie, we'll follow up on that one.
All right. So we are at the top of the hour. I did just show the index function. I hope you saw that. Uh, so again, thank you all. Thanks everyone for taking the time out today. Um, Again, hopefully run into some of you maybe if you're going to conference. If not, have a wonderful day and see you on our next Tableau Tuesday.